Hello and good afternoon. I have been saving this one up. I just haven't had an opportunity to come on and discuss this, but I feel like it is a good idea to do. I actually have a book that is called Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17, where I go through both of those chapters, line by line, verse by verse, and tell you what the Bible says is when they're going to happen. But I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time reciting back everything I go through in that book. What I'm going to do is give you a singular reference point to help you understand timing. And the reason I'm going to do that is because if one, then all. I operate very heavily on a thought process that I kind of refer to as exclusionary, the Bible being exclusionary. It's going to exclude the wrong possibilities until you can only conclude the right answer. So if there are, say, 10 people groups mentioned in this one prophecy, and you exclude one of them from some thought that you have, then all of it's wrong. If part of it is wrong, then it's wrong. Because if everything happens at the same time, and you can precisely negate one of the things mentioned from being in alignment with your thought, then your thought needs to be reevaluated. I'm going to, without going through this entire chapter, show you one way, according to one people group in here, where you can determine when this is going to happen. And it's with the first people group mentioned. Now, that is not to say that the Bible doesn't give you all of the other information about all of the other people groups too. I'm just going to, for the sake of brevity, show you how we can conclude this very quickly. Because a lot of people are interested in short and sweet. They don't want the in-depth, detailed analysis. So I'm not going to give you that. What I'm going to do is just short and sweet and to the point. Psalm 83:1. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. This is one of the very first things that we need to understand about Psalm 83 is that these are enemies of God's. They're not enemies of Israel. They are enemies of God who use Israel to get to God. If you cannot directly get to your opponent, you attack your opponent's representatives. That is what this is, this enmity, this hatred toward Israel, is that Israel's God's, and they can't get at God directly, so they try to get at God through Israel. They are very clearly stated to be enemies of God. When we understand this, all we have to do is ask ourselves, when does God defeat his enemies? At the second coming. I mean, that is a very simple and logical thought process. But let's just not make assumptions here. Let's follow this through a little bit more so that we can concretely identify that that is the correct answer. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people on account of not being able to get to God directly. So they've tried to get at Israel to get to God indirectly. They've consulted against thy hidden ones. That's a reference to the remnant. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, and the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. Well, that's because God put his name on Israel. So again, it's an indirect attack on God. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. When is anyone confederate against Jesus? At Armageddon. When does Armageddon happen? At the second coming. The tabernacles of Edom. It mentions the Ishmaelites, Moab, Hagarenes, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistines, inhabitants of Tyre, Asher, and they have hope in the children of Lot, who are Moab and Ammon. Okay, so we're just going to deal with Edom here. We have all of these other people groups, and what we find when we analyze who they are is they are children that came of unions that never should have happened. Or they are ancient brother versus brother or family against family. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you. Edom. Edom is Isaac versus Esau versus Isaac. Jeez, Esau versus Isaac. The older Esau and the younger Isaac. Jacob and Esau. Gosh, man. Jacob and Esau. Sorry. Isaac was the one that blessed them, gave the birthright to who he thought was Esau, but it was Jacob instead. This is the reason that Edom is the descendants of Esau, who sold his birthright to Jacob for stew because he was hungry. There was deception with Rebekah and Isaac and who got the birthright, whatever. But essentially, you have Isaac blessing Jacob instead of Esau. He thought he was blessing Esau. But you have Rebekah introducing deception to get Isaac to bless Jacob instead, because the Lord told her that the elder would serve the younger, that the birthright needed to go to Jacob. Regardless, Esau was more than willing to give his birthright up. What was that birthright? The Abrahamic covenant promises, the land promise, the natural seed promise, and most importantly, the spiritual seed promise, that the spiritual seed of Abraham would come through that line. So in giving up the birthright, he gave up Christ. We read in the Old Testament that Jesus says, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. Why? Because Esau denied him through the giving of the birthright, the giving up of the birthright. So what we find is that God's going to deal with the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, very specifically. And this comes from Numbers 24. Now, because Edom, the Edomites, the lineage of Esau, are mentioned in that verse, then we can understand of that, we can infer that all of the people groups that are a result of unions that never should have happened, the Hagarenes, the Ishmaelites, that was Abraham and Sarah trying to get around what they thought was God not being able to fulfill a promise. So instead of waiting on Isaac, who was the child of promise, they tried to take matters into their own hands and created enmity for Israel between two different people groups, the Hagarenes and the Ishmaelites. Moab and Ammon are a result of Lot and his daughters. Unions that never should have happened, begetting children that never should have happened, that are now perpetual enemies of Israel. They hate God. So that's where those people groups come from, is essentially unions or situations that never should have happened. So let's focus on Edom, though. Numbers 24 has a prophecy, starting in verse 17. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel. Capital S star, capital S scepter. A king is going to rise out of the line of Jacob. This is the spiritual seed part of the Abrahamic covenant promises that Esau gave up when he gave up his birthright in denying Christ. It went to Jacob, and there's going to come a ruler from the line of Jacob. What's he going to do? Shall smite the corners of Moab and destroy all the children of Sheth. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also shall be a possession, and Israel shall, for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. So this is telling you that by the hand of God directly, by the hand of Jesus Christ, when he comes back as King of Kings and Lord of Lords in Revelation 19, he personally is going to see to the destruction of Edom and Moab and the children of Sheth. Now, we actually see that in the book Obadiah, which is a one-chapter book specifically related to the destruction of Edom. So let's take a look, and I just have to get there. Gosh, I gotta find it. Yes. Obadiah, right between Amos and Jonah, a one-chapter book. It is literally telling you the fulfillment of the prophecy given in Numbers 24, that by the hand of Jesus Christ himself, Edom is going to die. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. There you go. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. Thou hast dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? This is Mount Seir, where the Edomites dwell. Though thou exalt thyself as an eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. If thieves come to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? And that's actually similar language used in Isaiah 17, the destruction of Damascus, where it talks about gleaning grapes left in the fruit in the uttermost branches, which is basically a remnant left when Jesus comes to destroy all the unbelievers. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. Remember Psalm 83, they are confederate against thee. They've hated thee. They've lifted up the head. They've gathered together with one consent, confederate against thee. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. Shall I not in that day, saith the Lord, even destroy the wise men out of Edom and understanding out of the mount of Esau? Thy mighty one, O Teman, shall be dismayed to the end, and every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, and in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, that is a reference to the second half of the 70th week per Daniel 11. Even thou wast one of them. Okay, let's go to Daniel. Second half of the 70th week, after the abomination of desolation. This is what this specifically is a reference to, and part of the reason that God gets to deal justice to them. So at the midpoint of the 70th week, there's an abomination of desolation. This is marked in Daniel 11:36. The king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself, magnify himself above every god, shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Okay? Thus shall he do in the most strongholds of the strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. He shall cause them to rule over many, shall divide the land for gain. That is a second half of the 70th week after the abomination of desolation. At the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. The king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, with horsemen, with many ships. There's just going to be war. He shall also enter into the glorious land. Many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand. So out of the hand of the beast, the one who commits the abomination of desolation, there are several who are said to escape. Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Why? Because Numbers 24 said they're gods. Jesus is going to deal with them. The Antichrist, the beast, does not get to do that. Jesus is going to do that. So the beast will not be allowed to destroy Edom, Moab, and Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries. The land of Egypt shall not escape. Talks about the Libyans and the Ethiopians. And then he's going to meet his end. His end shall come and none shall help him at the second coming, when Jesus destroys everybody. So Edom, Moab, and Ammon escape out of the hand of the beast. But post abomination of desolation, and before they escape out of his hand when he tries to overthrow them, there's going to be a division of the land of Israel. People are going to cast lots and, whatever, do stuff that they shouldn't be doing. This is after the remnant have fled. He says of Edom, in the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem. That's a reference to Daniel 11's, like I said, second half of the 70th week. Even thou was one of them. So the children of Edom were one of the ones that cast lots for Jerusalem. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother, in the day that he became a stranger. The remnant fled because if they stayed behind, they would have died. This is Jesus's prophecy in Matthew 24, that unless the days be shortened by their flight out, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days should be shortened because Michael takes them out of there to protect them for the second half of the 70th week. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither shouldest have thou spoken proudly in the day of distress. Thou shouldest not have entered in the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, they should not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither shouldest thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. So this tells you that Edom's going to try to stop them from fleeing, but God's going to preserve that remnant anyway. And Edom's going to essentially destroy those who don't flee and stay behind. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. For as ye have drunk upon mine holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and in the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. This is Joel 2:32. It shall come to pass that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be delivered, for in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. Okay, so what's going to happen? By the hand of Jesus himself to the Edomites, who not only is there a prophecy about in Numbers 24 on account of the Lord hating Esau because of what Esau did with the birthright, and on account of what Edom tries to do to Israel in the midpoint of the 70th week in the worst part of their lives. Do they help? Nope. Do they hinder? Yep. Do they kill? Sure do. Do they part the land? Yep. What's God do to Edom? The house of Jacob shall be a fire, the house of Joseph a flame, the house of Esau for stubble. They shall kindle in them, devour them. There shall not be any remaining in the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken it. They of the south shall possess the mount of Esau, and they the plain of the Philistines, and they shall possess the fields of Ephraim, the fields of Samaria, and Benjamin shall possess Gilead. That's the house of Israel. The house of Israel, house of Judah split. The house of Israel, house of Judah, capital Jerusalem, house of Israel, the northern 10 tribes. Their capital was Ephraim. The captivity of the host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites. The captivity of Jerusalem shall possess the cities of the south, and Savior shall come up on Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. So that makes it pretty clear when the destruction of Edom will occur and by whose hand it will occur. This is what I said. The Bible is exclusionary. People think that Psalm 83 has already been fulfilled, or that it needs to be fulfilled prior to some other event or point in time. If the Bible is telling you specifically when the destruction of one of these people groups happens, and they're all linked together, then that's when the destruction of all of them is going to happen. This is one example, for the sake of brevity, to help people understand that Psalm 83 is not something that we should be looking for prior to the rapture. It is not something that has already happened. It is something that will happen at the hand of the Lord on account of them being enemies of God, and Jesus will deal with his enemies in finality in one event at the second coming. And the book of Obadiah makes it very clear when the specific destruction of Edom will happen. Edom being the first people group mentioned in Psalm 83. So again, if all of them are linked to the same time period and the same event, and the Bible tells you when that's going to happen for one of them, then we can use inference to understand that that's when it's going to happen for all of them. If you guys have any questions, let me know, but that is the easiest way that I can tell you when that's going to happen, when I can explain, how I can explain that that is going to happen is using Edom. Hi, Triggered. Nice to see you. So like I said, if you guys have any questions, let me know. But again, this is not a sign that we should be looking for. Wishful thinking, I know, but it is a second coming culminating event when the enemies of God are dealt with in one singular event by Jesus at Armageddon. Edomites are in there too. See you guys later.